There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about internal rate of return, and then we'll work on some problems, and then we'll talk about the exam afterward. All right. So internal rate of return, folks, next to net present value, this is probably the most used analysis tool, decision tool that's out there. Okay, namely because when we talk about internal rate of return, we're talking about interest rates, and people seem to just relate better to interest rates than like net present value. You know, with net present value, we talk about the cash flows being the operating cash flows from the project, and we talk about adding value. And sometimes, you know, when you get talking about that, people don't understand the cash flows as well. They get a little confused. So when you talk percentages, people just kind of seem to be able to click with that. Okay. The other thing with internal rate of return, unlike net present value where we use our outside market rate of return or something like that, internal rate of return is based solely on the cash flows of the project. There is no outside influence on our calculations. Okay. Internal rate of return is the rate of return that makes our net present value 0. So basically, it's where we break even. What rate of return makes us break even? And then we accept the project if our required rate of return is less than the internal rate of return. And I'll show you that in just a minute on the PowerPoint here with the graph. Okay, if our required rate of return is greater than the internal rate of return, then we would reject the project. Okay, so, and I'll show you how to do this on the calculator. So we had our cash flows in our calculator, and I think I took mine out. And when we calculate the internal rate of return, we get the internal rate of return at 16.13. Okay. So if we look at it, here's our cash flows, and this line right here is what we call a net present value profile. So what we do is we calculate the net present value at different interest rates and basically draw the line, connect the dots. The internal rate of return is this return right here where we break even. Okay, so like we said earlier, we accept the project if our required rate of return is less than the internal rate of return. That puts us over in this area where we have a positive net present value profile. Obviously, the closer our required rate of return gets to our internal rate of return, the less value we're adding to the company. Okay. If our required rate of return is greater than the internal rate of return, that puts us over in this area, and we'd have a negative net present value. Okay, so we aren't even making our initial investment back. All you're seeing here, folks, this is just nothing but the time value of money. If you remember our initial concept, we said all things equal, right? The greater the interest rate, the lower the present value. So this is all you're seeing is the concept of the net present value. Now, if we pull up our calculator and hit our cash flows, and I think I did clear all those out. Okay, if I remember right, it was 165,000. Whoops, one too many. Was our initial cash flow, right? And then what was it? 63,120 was our next cash flow, and then what was it? 70. Was it 70,808 or 71,808? 080, I think. And then the last one I remember was 9,800. Okay. Once we have our cash flows in there, you just hit internal rate of return and hit compute. I'm a little off. Almost remembered them. But that's how we do that, right? And remember, once those cash flows are in there, that's where we could go to our net present value and calculate all our net present value and things like that. Okay, So once you have the cash flows in there, just hit internal rate of return, hit compute, and your calculator will pop that right out for you. Okay. All right, everybody good there? Any questions so far? All right, you guys are rocking and rolling. Please, if you have a question, make sure you feel free to speak up. All right, so let's go back to our 3 questions here. The 3 questions that help us decide on this rule, right? So does the internal rate of return account for time value of money? Kinda. We are taking into account time value of money, but we're not dealing with an outside source. So, so yes, in a way it does, okay? Does it account for the risk of the cash flows? Well, we don't account for it as an outside market or anything outside of this project, but we do have an idea when we talk about required rate of return to the risk. So kind of yes, it does, okay? Does it give us an indication of if we added value or not? Depends on if our required rate of return is above or below the internal rate of return, right? So again, kinda. So should it be our primary decision rule? No, but it is a close second, like we said, okay? The advantages of the internal rate of return, knowing what the return is kind of appealing, okay? Again, it's people understand percentages more than dollar amounts a lot of times. It's a way to communicate value when people don't understand all the details when we talk about estimating the cash flows, okay? Just like we said before, the cash flows, those were our operating cash flows that we talked about in chapter 2. So if they don't understand how we got those numbers, they might be uncomfortable with dealing with internal rate of return, or net present value, I'm sorry, okay? The other thing, if the internal rate of return is high enough, man, you don't really care what the required rate of return. If it has an internal rate of return of like 65%, you're not going to have a required rate of return higher than that. So really, you don't even have to worry about that. Okay. All right. So if we looked at this, project and we analyzed it through all our decision criteria, and net present value said to accept the project. Our payback period said to reject it. Our discounted payback said to reject it. Our average accounting return said to reject it. But internal rate of return said to accept it. So ultimately, which way would you lean on this project? Would you guys accept or reject this project based on what we've done so far in the chapter? Anybody? It's okay to talk.
I'd accept it.
Why is that, Eli?
I just thought net present value and internal rate of return are very good indications.
Well, yes, we'd accept it, and mainly net present value, because hey, we're adding value to the company, right? Eli was hesitant because you knew that second follow-up question was coming, didn't you? But yes, we would ultimately accept this project. Okay. All right. Now, there are some issues with net present value. Okay. Generally, we will get the same accept reject decision. There are a couple of exceptions. One of them is when we have what we call non-conventional cash flows. And what we mean by non-conventional cash flows is, and you can see that up here on this timeline, right? So we have our initial investment here that's negative, okay? And let's say this was a gas station. And we had a few positive years here, and then all of a sudden the inspector comes around and realizes, hey, your tanks are leaking in the ground, right? That's not a good thing. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to shut down, tear our tanks up, pull all the contaminated soil out of the ground, put new soil back in, put new tanks in the ground, do all that stuff. So obviously we're probably going to lose money this year, right? And then after that, we get back to making positive cash flows, okay? Well, anytime we have a change in our signs like we did here. We went from negative to positive and then positive to negative. That gives us another internal rate of return. And you'll see that in just a minute on one of the slides here, okay? The other time that we have issues with internal rate of return is if we have mutually exclusive projects. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, generally we have two types of projects. We have independent projects and mutually exclusive projects. Independent projects are where we have enough cash and resources and assets to where we could accept project A, we could accept project B, we could reject both, we could take one or the other or accept them both, okay? So it doesn't matter what we do, we have enough to be able to handle each of them independently based on their own merits, right? With mutually exclusive projects, our resources are limited to the point that we can only take one or the other. We can't do them both, okay? A good example I like to use is college. Think about it. If you lived in either Winston, Greensboro or Raleigh, Durham, you know, technically if you had enough cash and you could go to Wake Forest and UNCG, right? Take classes Monday, Wednesday at Wake Forest, Tuesday, Thursday at UNCG. Why in the world you'd want to do that, I have no idea. But, you know, one, you wouldn't have the time to study. Two, cash might be an issue. So you can't do that. You got to take one or the other. Okay. That's mutually exclusive. Okay. The other problem that you have is if you have cash flows that come in, if the projects have different types of cash flows. So let's say one project has a 3-year life and another project has a 8-year life. That's going to have some issues with internal rate of return and net present value, that just because of the timing of the cash flows. Okay. All right. And this is what we just talked about. Okay. So when we talked about the unconventional cash flows, you can see we have initial investment of 90,000, and I'm not going to do the calculations. I just want you to see. So that's negative. We have positive, positive. We have a negative cash flow again. This is what happens with the internal rate of return. The net present value profile gives you this nice little arc, and you actually have two separate internal rates of return because you have that change in the cash flows. Okay, so that's what we mean by non-conventional cash flows, and what we mean by you would have multiple internal rates of return. Okay, is everybody good there? All right, questions? Okay, so we'll move on. All right, so our summary of decision rules. Net present value has a required rate of return of 15%, so we accept the project, right? If we use the financial calculator, we get an internal rate of return of 10.1, okay? So we would reject that project, okay? This is going back to our unconventional cash flows, the example that they did just before that. So we have non-conventional cash flows. We saw our NPV profile. So how do you make that decision? You would use your net present value to make that decision, okay? All right. Now, let's talk about crossover internal rate of return, okay? If we have two different projects, all right, and you can see we have project A, which is the red line here, and we have, and has an internal rate of return of 19.43. And then you have project B, which is, what is that, the blue line, black line, whatever that is. You can see that has an internal rate of return of 22.17. We get a crossover of 11.8. Now, what does that mean? How do we get that? What you do is you take the cash flows for project A and the cash flows from project B, and it doesn't matter if you take B and subtract it from A or A and subtract it from B, but you do the math on that and then you calculate and we'll do a problem on this in the homework in just a minute. You calculate the internal rate of return on the outcome of that. And you can see this is what you get, 11.8%. Okay. So at this point, you're indifferent as to which project you would take. Both projects give you the same net present value. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Okay. Now, why is that important? Why do we want to know the crossover? Well, if we look at our net present value profiles on here, and we see, let's just say that we had a required rate of return of 7.5%. Okay. You can see that's somewhere in between here. So let's take this line up. Okay. So we go right there, and we see that project A has a higher net present value than project B. So with the two projects, if it was, mutually exclusive, we could only take one project, we would choose project A because it gives us a higher net present value. We're adding more value to the firm with project A. Now, let's go out and say that we had an 18% required rate of return somewhere in here, okay? Now you can see after the crossover point, project B starts giving us a higher net present value. So anything below 22.17, but up to 11.8%, I would take project B because that gives us the higher net present value and adds more value to the firm in that range. Okay. Does that make sense? Is everybody good? And again, we'll do a problem with that later on. Okay. All right. Questions now before we move on? Everybody's good. Okay. All right. Again, the conflicts, we talked a little bit about this before. Net present value gives us an idea of how much we increase the firm. If there's a conflict between the two, always go with net present value. You always want to go with the hard number, whether you're adding value to the firm or not. Okay. Modified internal rate of return. Folks, I'm going to tell you something. This won't be on the exam. All right. Namely because with modified internal rate of return, what they're doing, and firms handle it different in things like that. Some firms, I've seen some firms where they'll take the unconventional, like if they have unconventional cash flows, they'll move all the negative cash flows to the front so that all the negative outflows are in the earlier stage, and then all the positive. To me, you can't do that. The cash flows occur when the cash flows occur. Okay. And you can see here on this slide on the PowerPoint, some calculate net present value with all the outflows using the rate that you borrow the money at, and calculate net future value of all the cash inflows using the investment rate. So each firm kind of has their own way of doing a modified. That's why I say I'm not going to get into this with you on that. It's just out there. When you get out there, if your firm does modified internal rate of return, they're going to tell you how they want it done. Okay. There we go. And profitability index, we've already talked about that. So is everybody good on internal rate of return? Any questions before we move on? Okay. All right. So now we'll move on to the problems. How many of you worked the problems? Anybody? All right. So let's work out some problems here. I'm going to get rid of all these. This is what I did with the other class. All right. So the problems for chapter 7 or chapter 9. Did anybody look at them ahead of time? Zoe, why am I not surprised at that? How was breakfast, by the way?
It was good. It was just Cheerios.
Cheerios. Were they flavored or the plain Cheerios?
Just Honey Nut Cheerios, and then I put chocolate oat milk in it.
Oh, wow. My wife likes the plain Cheerios. I can't do that. I at least have to have the honey nut.
Yeah.
I think this morning I ate Captain Crunch because I woke up late, so I ate my kid's cereal.
I always had Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but then I didn't because I was like, that's a lot of sugar. I'm going to drive to Boone later, so I didn't want to be tired.
Driving up here, coming up for the weekend or something?
Well, I came up on Friday, and then I came back yesterday afternoon, and
Oh.
then 'cause I left some stuff here, so then I'm going to head back up.
Gotcha. All right, so let's work on some problems here. One of the things I want to do is I want to start at the end. Okay, so let's start with problem 17. Problem 17 is it kind of brings in everything together, so we can kind of knock out all this stuff at one time. And what I'm going to do, let's see, we got 13 of us in here. All right. So let's see, we got these two different projects. So we have project A and project B. Project A has an initial cost of $364,000. Okay. Has 46,000, 68,000, 68,000, and then 458,000. Okay. Project B has 52,000. And then we have 25,000, 22,000, 21,500, and 17,500. Okay. We're also going to be making a decision on which project to take here. Okay. And in the first one, let's see, we're going to do payback. And then B is discounted payback. Okay. So I want to try to split you guys up. On my screen, I have Zoe, Eli, and Connor. So why don't you three do project A? And then the rest of you do project B, okay? C is net present value. And this is at 11% is our required rate of return. D is internal rate of return. And then E is profitability index, okay? So again, Zoe, Eli, and Connor are going to work all these for problem A, and the rest of you are going to do problem B. Okay. Zoe, what do you got for A on payback? Do you have that?
Yeah, 3.40.
Okay.
Years.
3.40 years. Okay. Does anybody have the payback period on problem B yet, or project B yet? Is anybody working that out yet?
I'm trying to work on.
Okay, Ty. I'll give you a second. So while he's working that out, we're at the end of the semester, guys. Holy cow, it's over. Oh, look, Zoe's happy. She's going to go party. That's really why she's coming up here. She's going to come up.
No, my mom said that I wasn't allowed to socialize for like a week.
Why is that?
I don't know. So she both my parents are still working. And so she was planning on coming up for Mother's Day. So she doesn't want me to like expose myself. And then cause she works at a daycare, she's the director of a daycare.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Ty, how you coming? You got it yet?
Well, I had it, and then I realized I didn't push enter when I put all the numbers in. So now I got to go back and put them back in.
All right. Push enter on the cash flows?
Yes.
Okay. I'll just give it to you. How's that? I'll help you out.
All right. I appreciate that.
Ty says 2.23 years. So based on that, which project would we take?
B.
B,
Okay. And why is that?
because it takes less time to finish.
Exactly. Less time to recoup our initial loss, right? Okay. Now, discounted payback. And understand with discounted payback, we're discounting the cash flows and we're just calculating the payback period again. So, what is our discounted payback period for A? Anybody?
I had
3.72 years.
There you go, Connor. 3.72 years, right? Okay. Anybody for project B? It's 2.74 years. Okay. So based on discounted payback, which project would we take?
B.
Okay. And for the same reason, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, net present value at 11%. What's the net present value of project A?
I got 84,051 and 57 cents.
Okay. Very good. Anybody got it for project B? Let's go 15,626.62. Okay.
Can you go over how you got that? Because I got 12,627.
Sure. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to our cash flows, and I got to clear all the work out, right? Okay. So Ty, what's our initial cash flow?
52,000.
52,000, right? And that's negative, right? Cash flow 1, 25,000. Okay. That happens one time. Cash flow 2 is 22,000. And that happens one time. Cash flow 3 is 21,500. Okay. And then 17,500. Okay. I got all my cash flows, right? I'm looking for net present value. So I'm going to go to net present value. It asks me for my interest rate. That's 11%. So I put 11. Okay. Go down, hit net present value, and I just compute that. 15,626.62.
Okay, yeah, I did. So I didn't put the interest rate in. I think I just skipped past that, and I didn't put 52,000 in as a negative. So I think that messed me up.
Yeah. The cash flow, that initial investment. Now, quite honestly, you know, the old saying is you got to spend money to make money. So most of the time, your initial cash flow is going to be negative. Even like I said, if you did consulting and you bought business cards and you bought letterhead, that's a cash outflow, right? You probably want to have a computer. You could have positive cash flows for your initial costs in a situation like, let's say it's a convention or something like that, and people put deposits down or have to pay ahead of time. That would be all positive cash flow. And then generally everything after that is negative, right? So when you're paying for the rooms and the venue and the catering and all that stuff. So there are situations where it could be reversed. Okay. Now, getting back to this, based on net present value, which project would we take?
Project A.
Yeah. And why is that?
Because it has a higher MPV.
Much higher MPV, right? Okay. Now, then we're going to talk about internal rate of return. So what's the internal rate of return for project A?
I got 18.14.
18.14, right? Okay. And what is it for project B?
Is it 25.29?
Yes. Okay. So based on internal rate of return, which project do we take?
B,
Why is that, Ty?
because you're getting a higher rate of return.
It's higher, so there's more room for positive net present value, right? Okay. And if you needed to, you just hit internal rate of return and compute, and that's where you get that, right? Now, what about the profitability index? Who has that for A?
About 1.231.
Now, what does that mean?
For every dollar you spend, you get $1.23 back.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. What about project B?
I got 1.301.
Okay. So based on that, which project would we take?
B.
B. Okay. Now, F says, based on your answers of 1 through E, which project would you choose? So you got all these answers here. You've done all this analysis. So which project do you take?
A,
Why is that, Connor?
because the net present value is the highest. It has the most value.
Exactly. So ultimately, even though we've done all this and it's 4-1, we would choose A. Okay. So here's my question. If that's the case, why don't we just do net present value and be done with it?
Would it be because if B was like 83,000 and your EPI was 1.3 or $1.30, for your EPI, would B end up being more than A?
No, because ultimately, remember, what's our ultimate goal? Page 9, orange box, top of the page. You remember, Ty?
Yes, but you have to come back to me here in a couple minutes.
we got to maximize shareholder wealth, right? Okay. So our ultimate goal is to maximize shareholder wealth. We do that with net present value. So if that's the case, why do all this other analysis? I can't remember if I mentioned this with this class or not. Let's put it, we do it because we want to see it from different perspectives, right? We want to see the project from different angles and see if we get the same answer. If you want to put it in a practical day-to-day term, think about when you were starting to like somebody and thought about asking somebody out. What did you do when you thought about that? How many of you talk to your friends? Right? If Eli is liking Zoe, he's going to ask people, hey, do you know that girl Zoe? What do you know about her? Well, why? Because they might have a different perspective. They see her in different environments, right? Eli sees her in class. Hey, in class, she's read her stuff. All the homework's done. She seems to have her act together, you know? And that might be the case. But then he goes and talks to Carolyn, and Carolyn's like, man, I party with her on the weekends. Let me tell you, you need a fifth in a case to just even start to have a good time with, she can just really put them down. And then you might look at it and go, Eli might look and go, wow, maybe that's a side of Zoe that I'm not interested in. And so we back off, right? Or he's like, hey, I'm a party hardy too. Let's go. That's it. I don't know. But we do that to, how many of you talked to your parents about somebody before you were going out with them? Or you brought them home and you're like, ah, this guy's great. And your parents are like, Zoe, what are you thinking? No way. You stay away from them.
Actually, I have a funny story. One time I brought this guy home and he shook my dad's hand and it was like really limp. And my dad made fun of him for like 2 months after, until I finally was like, that guy wasn't right. But it was like, he just like didn't know how to shake my dad's hand. And so my dad was like, no.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's why we do it. That's why you talk to other people about somebody you're interested in, so you get their perspective, and that's why we do all this analysis. It's kind of funny. I always tell my boys, that is one thing I stress with my boys. I'm like, you shake their hand and you look them in the eye. I don't care if they're ripping you another one. You burn a hole through their eyes with yours, man. You just lock eye, So I try to instill that with my kids too. So.
Good.
And I know, that's extreme. You guys know I'm with Zoe, I'm joking and stuff. I like having students that understand that stuff and I can pick with. You guys have been great. All right. So let's look at some other problems here. Let's look at problem 13. Okay. Man, I really can't believe this has been a crazy semester. It's over. We finally got there. I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt because our department assistant is retiring today. And as soon as we finish this call, I got a conference call with them. Our whole department's getting on a conference call to wish her well. And we're doing a Hawaiian theme for her send-off for retirement. And this one actually came from Hawaii. When ASU played Hawaii in 2003, my wife and I went out there for our first anniversary. So I actually have a Hawaiian shirt, legit.
Impressive.
I don't know why, but I figure win in Rome, right? Or win in Hawaii. All right. So problem 13, we're talking about net present value. And so this problem, we got two different projects here, okay? So we got project X. And let's see, 1, 2, 3 cash flows. Costs us $23,000 to get started. We get 10,490 and 10,900. Whoops, that's wrong. And then 10,500. Okay. Then we have project Y. Costs us $23,000 to get started, and 12,000 and 9360, and then 10,400. Okay. They tell you to sketch net present profile range. Forget that. I mean, you can't do that. Okay, so we're going to subtract these out and we're going to do a timeline. So we subtract out, we get 0 there for the initial, right? What do we get for the next one? So 12,000 from 10,490, that is what?
1510.
1510, negative, right? Okay. The next cash flow, what do we get? I can do the last one. That one's easy.
1540.
Okay, 1540, right? So what we do is we calculate the internal rate of return based on these cash flows. Okay, so what is that internal rate of return? And that's going to give us our crossover.
I got 8.11.
Yes. Okay, so what that means is let's say project X is red, right? And project Y is going to be blue. Okay. So we would have something like this, that's X. And we would have something like this is Y. Looks about the same, doesn't it? Then right here, this is 8.11%. Okay. Now, at that point, we're indifferent as to which project we would take. Okay. Any required rate of return less than that, we would obviously take project X. Any required rate of return above that, up to the internal rate of return, we would take project Y. Okay, does that make sense? Is everybody good there? Okay. Questions on that one? All right, let's look at problem 12. Okay. Again, we have two different cash flows. So we have A has 37.5, 17.3, 16.2, 13.8, and 7,600, right? And then you got project B, again, 37.5, 5,700, 12.9, 16.3, and 12.7. Wow, sorry. 20, daggone, did it again. I'm sorry, guys. 27,500. Okay. So A asks us for what is the internal rate of return for each of these projects. So what's the internal rate of return for project A?
I got 19.71.
Yes. Okay. 19.71%. Okay. What is it for project B?
I got 18.76.
Okay. All right. B says, what's the net present value at 11%? Okay. So what's the net present value at 11%?
For project A, I got 6,330 and 67 cents.
Okay. And B?
I got 8,138 and 59 cents.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so using just internal rate of return, which project would we take?
Project A,
Project A, right? Using net present value, which project would we take?
project B,
Okay, project B. C says, over what range of projects would you choose company A and which would you choose company B, right? So on C, we would calculate the crossover internal rate of return, and we get 16.48%. Okay. So if we drew that out, okay, we would have project A going like this, and we'd have project B going like that, right? The crossover is right here at 16. So it says, at what discount rate would the company choose project A? And this was A, and this was B. Okay. So where would we choose project A?
wouldn't it be anywhere above the 16.48?
Yes, anything above 16.48. So anything in here, whoops, I meant to do that in a different color. Okay. So anything in this range right here, we would choose A. And anything here, we would choose B. Okay. Does that make sense? Is everybody good? Okay. Let's see. What other problems. Let me ask you this. Were there any problems that gave you guys issues? Anything you want to ask about?
Do you mind going over how to get the 16.48 again? I'm still kind of confused on the crossover point.
Okay. So what we would do, Ty, all right, let's do C here. This is going to be crossover. Okay. I'm going to take B and subtract it from A. So I'm going to go subtract, 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 right? So when I do that, and I put that number wrong, man, I guess I'm looking forward to the end too. I don't know. I know you guys are depressed that it's over, but it shows on your face, especially Zoe. I mean, she's smiling ear to ear like, last class, woohoo!
No, I'm sad. If I'm being honest, you're one of my favorite professors. Like, you're very real. So it's like, it's bittersweet.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Zoe. I tried to do that for you guys. Yeah, and this semester's kind of weird because I really miss having you guys in class where we can see each other and spend some time and all that. But so Ty, let me go back to helping you out here. I'm sorry. So we're going to subtract B from A. Are you okay with that? You see what we're going to do?
Yes.
Okay. So when we do that, we'll just do this right here. Okay. So we subtract the top line. Obviously, a negative and a negative is positive, so that becomes 0. And that won't always be the case. Projects aren't always going to have the same initial cost, right? And it doesn't matter. Whatever the number is, that's going to be what you put right there. Okay. So take the 17.3 minus the 5.7, and what do you get?
Negative 11,600.
Should be positive, right? Because this is positive. Yeah. So it should be 11.6, right? Okay. Now the 16.2 minus the 12.9, and what do you get?
3,300.
3,300. Okay. And then the 13.8 minus 16.3.
2,500.
25, but that is negative, right? And then the last one, what do you get? 19.9?
Yeah, negative 19,900.
19.9. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I go to my cash flows, 0. Okay. Cash flow 1 is 11,600. Happens once, then 3,300. 2,500 negative, and then 19.9. Okay, I want to make sure I got that negative. So then, Ty, you with me that I got all my cash flows in there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I hit internal rate of return and just hit compute.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Yep, thank you.
Okay. All the other problems leading up to this is just what we did in 17. We're doing payback, discounted payback, all that other stuff. So any questions on any of that? Everybody good? All right. Let's talk about your final then. So I told you when the final was, right? We said that was for you guys, it's May 7th at 8 o'clock in the morning. So the final will be that time. It's not going to be open all day. It is just, it opens at 8. It'll cut off at, what do you get, 2.5 hours? It'll cut off at 10:30. So don't think you got all day to take this. This is different. Okay. So it's just on chapter 9. Okay. You have your exam review on As You Learn. Right now it's like, it's going to be minimum 35 questions. It might be 40. Okay. and it's about half and half again. So you got about 20 concept questions, things like what is internal rate of return? What is net present value? What's the advantage of the payback period? Things like that, okay? Then you got 20 problems. Hey, here's this project. These are the cash flows. Calculate the profitability index. In those 20 problems are things like what we just did in problem 12 and problem 17. So you might have, here's the cash flows for 2 projects. I want you to calculate internal rate of return and net present value based on an internal rate of return of XYZ. Which project do you take? Or based on net present value, which project do you take? Okay. So you're going to have to do the calculations. You're going to be given a decision rule to follow, and then you got to make the right decision based on that rule. Okay. Is everybody good with that?
So it's going to be like a 4-part problem for one question?
No. Well, I mean, you're going to have to do a calculation and then make a decision.
Okay.
The answer will be what's the decision, but you got to do the calculations to get to that point.
Okay.
Okay. As I said, it will be on Connect just because we're all used to Connect and everything else. Okay. So we should be good there. All right. Any questions? Nothing? Now's the time to answer. Or ask. I guess my time to answer, your time to ask. Anything else? All right. Hey, the course evals up there, if you guys do it, fine. If not, that's fine too. I'll be honest with you. The only reason I put it out there this time is I wanted to get feedback from you guys on like some of this stuff. And I know it took me a little while to kind of get some of the tech stuff worked out to get this going the way we wanted it to. But what and when I tell you guys this again, this is just me. Most of the time, I don't even look at that stuff. I'll be honest with you. And the only reason for that is because usually it's so bipolar. People either love you and you can't do anything wrong, or they hate you and you can't do anything right. I mean, I had one guy tell me on an eval, he didn't like my voice and I needed to change my voice. That's just stupid. As a college educated adult, you're going to put I can't change my voice. You know, it is what it is. So once I read that, and one student put on there, I use big words that they didn't understand. And I'm like, I don't know. I thought I talked pretty plain, and I thought I tried to keep everything simple. So kind of once I got those 2 evaluations in my first year, I was like, this is ridiculous. But I am going to look them over for info on the technology stuff, or if you guys have recommendations or something like that. I do look them over for things like that. But as far as like, Eli said I need to, he doesn't like the way I do some, I'll take that into consideration. But if Eli puts on there, man, he's a bald-headed knucklehead, I have no, he's a waste of human air, I probably won't read anything else Eli puts on there because it's stupid. It's not going to help me out. Okay. But anyway, like I said, that's just me. Other professors might look at it, but anyway. Well, guys, I enjoyed it. I know it was a crazy semester. I'm glad we got through it all together, but we managed to do it. We managed to survive. And those of you that are back in the fall, please stop by, keep in touch, stop by, let me know how you're doing. Those of you that are graduating, good luck with all your future endeavors and all that good stuff. For all of you, if I can ever help you out with anything, you have my contact info. You know how to get in touch with me with email and my office number, any of that stuff. I love hearing from students when they graduate, what they're up to and things like that. If you come back for homecoming, please look me up or whatever. I'd love to hear how you're doing. And other than that, guys, good luck with your exams and have fun this summer. And like I said, if I can help you out with anything, just let me know.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Yes, ma'am. What do you have?
For our grades online,
Yes.
you said you put in chapter 10.
Yep.
Well, it's not showing up on my grade book at all. Could that just be because it's not like I could just be missing something, but
may I look at it? Are you okay
Yeah,
if I look?
yeah.
Okay. And the only reason I say that is if other people have the questions, Zoe.
Yeah.
So let me get Zico's not here. So you said I could look at yours. Okay. Part of what you see in here, let's see, if you go down, right there it is.
Oh, okay. It's just not showing up on our thing.
Is it not?
No.
Okay. All right. Somebody else asked me about it. I'm like, it's right there. And I did the same. And it might be because I put it in manually instead
Okay.
of you guys taking it and it populating automatically. So,
Okay.
so it's there. And again, you've got until 5 o'clock to get that done. If anybody hasn't, for this quiz, if you haven't done this quiz, that's in there. The Excel resubmission, if you need that, that is in there. That's due at 5. So don't forget that if you're doing that. Okay. All right. And Zoe, on yours, you just need to add, everything's in there but the last exam.
Yeah.
So you can play with that and then just take this number and divide it by 600.
Okay.
And that'll give you where you're at and what you got going. Okay. Or you could calculate what you needed on the final, hey, I want to get a B or whatever. You can kind of work backwards from there.
Right.
Okay.
Is your grading scale 93 is an A? I can't remember.
It's whatever app uses. Isn't it 90? I thought 92 was an A.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember. Like all my professors use different grading scales, so I really don't.
I don't see how they do that. I thought we were.
Okay.
Here
cool.
it is. So 92 is an A.
Perfect.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've had professors where it's a 93 is an A. I've had online where it's 94 is an A.
I had a 95 was an A, and I got a 94.5, and she wouldn't give me an A. She gave me an A minus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was pretty pissed, but
I don't understand because that's ASU's grading scale. I don't see how they can use something other than that.
I don't know.
They kind of leave it up to the professors. I had a professor that a 63 was a C minus. Best
Dang.
stats class ever.
That was what?
Best stats class ever.
Oh, well, stats. I totally get it on stats, man. I'm telling you. Holy cow. Yeah. I remember when I took stats in the MBA program, sitting in class, it like all made sense and I could do it. And then when I got out of class, man, I couldn't do anything. I spent so much time in the daggone professor's office. I think the seat has my name on it still because he's still here and we're good buddies and stuff.
Wait, who is he?
Huh?
Who was it?
Dave.
Oh,
Dr. Dave, Dinesh Dave. His kids worked for me at my restaurant when I had my restaurants and stuff, but I spent so much time in his office. I mean, it's just like, I can't do it, man. I could get it in class and with him I could get it, but like homework and on the tests, nothing worked. I just couldn't do it. I don't know. But anyway. Anything else?
Yeah. What are your thoughts about the personal finance class?
I think everybody ought to take it.
Are you teaching it?
I'm not in the fall. The gentleman that helps me with the financial literacy initiative on campus, Kevin Huff, I think he might have some sections of it. And I'm going to tell you, he's an awesome guy, super smart, very intelligent. He's a bar qualified attorney. He's a CPA and he's a financial planner. The dude is like way smarter than me, man. We're in the same room, but breathing different air. Excellent guy. Kevin Huff is his name. I might be teaching it in the spring. I'll be honest with you. I am pushing for that to be a mandatory class. And we're doing that in the finance department as a department. We're trying to do that as a college of business. It's not going to happen anytime soon. I've been pushing it for a couple of years, and the university's fighting me on it. But I don't understand why. To me, that's a no-brainer. And we're trying to work with the SGA on that to get their side of it. And I told the student body president, I said, look, for me pushing it, it's a professor who's trying to get job security. If you students push it and say, you're not preparing us financially to hit the world, that's a different story. That's the university not doing their main job and their main function. So that we're trying to get the SGA to help with that. So, but it's a great question. It covers, I tried to put as much in as I can, but I can only do so much. That gets into insurance, estate planning, talks about your bank accounts, a bunch of different things, credit cards, all that good stuff. I highly recommend that class. If for some reason, and also look in the fall, I work with the Wellness and Prevention Center, and I'm going to do 3 or 4 financial literacy presentations around campus in the fall. Most of them are at the student union.
Will the personal finance class, will that kind of touch on like a little bit of stocks and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Like kind of we did in this class.
Yeah, we talk about stocks and bonds and investing. We talk about mutual funds, IRAs, 401s, everything. The way I teach it, and I think the way Kevin teaches it, we try to be on the same page with that. The way I teach it, all your homework assignments and all the assignments are geared for when you finish with the class, you have your financial goals, and you can walk into a financial planner and go, here's what I want to accomplish. Here's my goals. Let's make this happen. You can walk into an insurance agent and go, here's all the property that I own. This is everything I need to cover. Get me policies to cover this. So when you finish with that class, you have all that put together.
Gotcha.
That's the way I approach the class. And I think Kevin does the same thing.
Okay. I'll look into that.
Yeah. But I highly recommend that class if you can do it.
All right, thank you.
Anytime. What else you guys got? All right. I won't hold you guys up. Zoe's got to drive to Boone or something to go socialize or whatever. She's got to go find her fifth in her keg or her case.
I have to find a job. That's what I need.
Oh, let me tell you, my 11-year-old, he's wanting, there's a lady on the fire department with us who has a rafting company.
Mm-hmm.
And she just right down the river from us, and she does hire some kids sometimes to do some stuff. He's all about getting a job. He did his resume and all this stuff to present to her to try to get a job. 11 years old.
I love that.
It's funny. Yeah. So anyway, well, guys, I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope I presented the stuff the way that you can grasp it, and that it was beneficial for you. Again, good luck with your exams and this summer, and Zoe finding a job, and you guys that are graduating finding jobs and stuff. If I can ever help you out, just let me know, okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Take care.
See ya.
Thank you.
See ya.